Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today I'll be experimenting in the play queue with this white, black and green or Abzan colored high toughness deck built around Doran, Besieged by Time. This 4 mana 05 gives our high toughness creatures a 1 mana discount, and whenever a creature we control attacks or blocks, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the difference between its power and toughness. So Doran would get +5/+5, attacking as a 5/10, and we can enhance the damage even further if we also control a Bedrock Tortoise. The 4 mana 06 gives our creatures hexproof during our turn, and then each creature we control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So if we now attack with a 5/10 Doran, it can deal 10 damage, and the Bedrock Tortoise with Doran in play can hit for 12, so then it doesn't take very many attacks to close out the game. And then the rest of the deck has a lot of 0 power and high toughness creatures that can also accelerate our mana, like the Great Forest Druids and Overgrown Zealot can both help us cast our 4-drops on turn 3. There's also the UFO, which can tap to put an extra land onto the battlefield, also has flying. Important to note that none of these creatures have Defender, so they can still attack even if they do not have any power to begin with, which is important if we want to get damage in with a Tortoise or Doran. And then we also added the Transdimensional Bovine in the Ninja Turtle set as a 3 mana 04 flyer that can tap for 2 mana of any one color, so that also fits the deck nicely. And then to make sure we have a bit of card draw built into the deck in the face of removal heavy decks, we also have the full set of Enduring Innocence, which will always draw a card when playing one of our low-powered creatures. And then to give us a bit more card advantage, we also have a 1 of Vivian Reed, which can +1 to look at the top 4 to reveal a land or creature and put it in hand. And then the -3 can also be an answer to artifacts, enchantments, or creatures with flying, which can also come in handy. And then another big payoff for this strategy is Expel the Interlopers as a one-sided 5 mana board wipe, as we get to choose a number between 0 and 10, and then destroy all creatures with power greater than or equal to the chosen number. So if we choose 1 as our number, we get to keep all our 0-powered creatures, which is basically every creature in the deck, while destroying everything else. So this can be incredibly effective against a lot of other creature strategies. And then to complement Expel the Interlopers, we also have a 1 of 0-point ballad, where we get to destroy all creatures with toughness X or less, losing X life, and then if X is 6 or more, we can also reanimate a creature that got destroyed, but usually prefer Expel the Interlopers as it's going to be a more one-sided effect and also doesn't cost us any life. And then we also have a few spot removal spells to clean up smaller creatures early on in the game with Requiting Hex, and then 2 copies of Get Lost, which can also hit enchantments and planeswalkers alike. And then the mana base is just mostly mana fixing here with lots of shock lands and verge lands, which also synergize quite well. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. We have Double Tortoise and Expel the Interlopers. Bit of a slow start, but we do have a Requiting Hex. I don't think it's bad enough to mulligan. Ideally, draw one of our 2 mana accelerants. Enduring Innocence would be decent too. And then of course a couple lands. Well, let's see what we're up against. Ideally a deck with a few creatures. Llanowar Elves will do. Still gonna prioritize a Druid. Since I don't actually mind our opponents playing a bunch of creatures out here, given the Expel in hand. So we don't need to slow down the Elves. And yeah, opponent's fully going off here with our Badger Mole. Now, I do not have my 5th land yet, so it's possible our opponent can go crazy next turn and present lethal on the following. And then if I don't draw a land for Expel, I could be dead. But yeah, what's the worst that can happen? Can also make a case for the Innocence, so maybe next turn I can play the Tortoise and draw a card. Rhythm for 4 probably gets Ouroboros. So this is kind of perfect for us, assuming we draw the land. Because we just get to one-sided wipe their board and did not get punished. Thank you for 6. And our opponent's super far behind. And that'll do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Got some interaction, some mana acceleration, some card draw. So whether we draw more mana creatures or some of our finishers, both are fine. And then, yep, facing blue-red. So Druid into Doran could be the curve. Although Ashling's pretty scary. Opponent on elementals. So we'll see what they discard, just a land. Not opposed to hexing, because that allows me to play the Innocence before we run out our creatures to draw more. They may not have a ton of other targets for acquiring hex. Alright, I guess Flame Braider is one of them. So now, Get Lost feels a bit worse. So I'll just play the Innocence. Although we do now have to watch out for Sunderflock shenanigans and bouncing our board. Winter Night Stories is okay. So I could see going 2-drop plus Get Lost, although now with double Flame Braider that's maybe less appealing. So Sunderflock, 9 mana, -2 is 7. So they could cast it next turn if they wanted to. Although it's not too devastating since they're not attacking for any damage. So maybe this is still a Doran turn. Get to draw. Don't mind offering the trade. And now the Ballad is a pretty nice answer for the Flame Braiders. Roaming Throne is acceptable. Cannot Ballad for 4 yet. So drawing a land would be huge. Another Flame Braider. And a Doran. Alright, so I can at the very least play something like a Zealots, and then still play Ballad for 2, which clears all the Flame Braiders, which is pretty effective. Ballad for 2, yeah, cannot Get Lost a Roaming Throne. So, probably start with the Zealots. See what we draw off the Innocence. A land, so next turn I could Ballad for 4. Yeah, interesting spot. Maybe just Ballad for 2, attack with Doran. Opponent would take 5. Something like a Deceit next turn. Bouncing 2 things and discarding could be effective. I've already drawn my card for turn. Yeah, I guess we Ballad for 2. Could attack with the Innocence first, I suppose. I don't think they're chumping Doran with a Flame Braider, but I could be wrong. Alright, that happens. So now I actually still get to draw if I play one of my creatures out. Since the Innocence sees it for the first time. And Expel the Interlopers is another awesome answer. Opponent just going for the Winter Night Stories. And getting rid of Ashling. So they need some interaction now. More Winter Night Stories. Leaving red-green available. And yeah, opponent seems pretty dead now. Can play the UFO, draw a card, but this is already an attack for lethal. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. We're heavy on interaction, light on creatures, but at least we have Doran, so I'll give it a try. Facing a red-white. And looks like allies, perhaps. Find target for requiring hex. Before they get a chance to maybe draw a card. Play another tap lands. And then expel the interlopers, should be pretty effective. And there's Katara. Alright, I guess I'll play the druid now. And then next turn I could already expel the interlopers, we'll see. So Katara doubling the triggers of their allies. Can immediately draw a card if you control a Voyager when you play Katara. And of course plenty more allies with effects when they enter. For now opponent's passing, so they could be hanging on to Aang, which can airbend 2 things. So not a turn for expel, but could go ahead and play Doran. And then we're probably gonna get our 2 creatures airbended soon. Could try to attack with the druids. Would hit for 4. Maybe our opponent can generate some chum blockers. That works. And yep, reinforcements end of turn, making now 2 1/1s. So yeah, ideally next turn we can expel and then get rid of all their creatures with 1 power or greater. Ooh, Mardu Siegebreaker. Probably why they named Human with Cavern of Souls instead of Ally. So now they can make an extra reinforcements. And yeah, I'm not going to want to block the Death Toucher. So that's a pretty cool synergy. So unless their last card is Aang, this expel is going to be quite devastating. Alright, that works. They do still get the reinforcements back, admittedly. Opponent falls to 7. Opponent says good game, too far behind. I'll take it, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. We have the Druid to make white mana, and then a turn 3 Tortoise is decent. So I'll keep it. Facing blue-red. At least their burn spells are not going to be able to deal with our 4 toughness creatures all that easily. Opponent looks to be on lessons. So they do have some answers to my 2 drops here. Combustion Technique with 2 lessons in the graveyard. And then Arrow's Demonstration would do it too. They've got the Monument. That one I cannot easily answer outside of Vivian. But yeah, Bedrock Tortoise looks okay. Since we cannot cast Enduring Innocence yet. Still waiting on a Shockland to enable everything. Another Monument, alright, that's scary. And another Innocence. So do we play second Tortoise or just play Druid Attack for 10? Those are the options. Feels like our opponent's going to be able to do some damage next turn. So then would I rather have double Tortoise in play? I think so. Still technically threatens lethal next turn if they have nothing. Firebending Lesson, not enough by itself, so they need another burn spell. But they now do get to go off with the Artist's Talents. Accumulate Wisdom, we'll draw 3. And then they can cast another spell in my turn, making 2 more treasures to keep it going. Another Accumulate Wisdom, alright. So feels like they're getting desperate here, because I believe they've already made both treasures. So they can no longer cast anything, and then they would just be dead. So they probably should have waited to cast an instant in my turn. But yeah, I'll take it. Just attack for 16 here. And that'll do it. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Turn 1 Hex, turn 2 Zealot, turn 3 Innocence. And then maybe a Vivian to follow up. So we've got lots of card advantage, facing what looks to be a control deck. So this one may not resolve. And for toughness, at least it survives some of the 3 damage burn spells out of Jeskai control. But it's not like they would be able to cast those right now. Get Lost will work. But next turn I can still play the Innocence as we get to enable both Verges with the Plains. So yeah, hopefully we can stick the landing 3 steps to counter. Could have also answered Vivian. And drawing a land is useful. I think I'm still leaning Innocence over Tortoise, so I can also explore to make it more likely that we get to 5 mana for Vivian. And then playing the Tortoise afterwards also nuts as a card. So I'm gonna say no to the Bovine. Flanker. Packing some Graveyard Hate is sort of mandatory in best of 1, especially for a control deck. Can also maybe pressure our Planeswalkers, so wouldn't be opposed to trading for it. If we didn't have Vivian, I would of course just win the race with my lifelinker. But now that we get the enchantment back, they'll need another Get Lost to get rid of it. So it's actually safer in play in case they are playing Ultima, which can wipe the board and end the turn, because then we wouldn't get this back. Now they do still have an Anchorage, but that we can also hex pretty easily. So while I could slime down Vivian, I think I want to test out the waters with the Tortoise first. And draw off Innocence. And once it's in play we can safely explore, as we'll have hexproof. Although, then again, unless they tap out for a sweeper, it's going to be tricky to find a window to resolve Vivian safely. So at this point we want to draw more copies of Bedrock Tortoise, Doran, and Enduring Innocence. The River Regent will draw a discard. Demolition Field's gone. Fountain Port making fish tokens can actually keep our opponent alive for quite some time. Our opponent hardcasts the Regent. That works for me. So I can go for Vivian, destroy the Regents, and then still have Hex for the Anchorage. So the fact that we shocked in the Overgrown Tomb is kind of a giveaway that we might have a Hex. But yeah, attacking with Anchorage would be the cleanest way of removing a Vivian here without needing an additional card. But the opponent's not going to risk it. So now we've got an active Planeswalker. And we'll find some more lanes. So we'll try Innocence into Tortoise. Now that Anchorage can't finish off Vivian by itself, I think that's safe. Opponent does have the counterspell. Suppose if they have removal for Innocence and the mana to activate Anchorage, they can finish off Vivian. An attack for 1. Again, I'm tempted to trade just because of Ultima wiping the board. Safer to have the enchantment than the creature. Opponents digging for answers. Hope they can't answer Vivian right away, and then we should find more creatures to keep enabling the Innocence. what do we like? I guess a bovine's fine, still keeps up hex. Start with tortoise, can pay for no more lies and keep hex available. If I play the bovine, it's pretty likely that they wipe the board. So I would prefer waiting to draw an extra card of Innocence. They make a token. That's fine. I could have hexed it end of turn, but I'll keep it as another answer to the anchorage. Yeah, the problem here is that since we can't overextend into a board wipe, our opponent does have a lot of time to draw out of it. So the game is far from over. Do I destroy anything end of turn? I don't think so. Keep plussing Vivian. Eventually we'll reach an ultimate. Play the bovine. Draw of Innocence. Still gonna hang on to my additional creatures here. Just attack with a tortoise. Opponent can chump, draw Fountain Ports. And that most likely will see a Day of Judgment next turn. First a stock up. Yeah, but they can get lost Vivian. We do lose a lot of pressure. Day of Judgment, as we expected. But we get to keep Vivian for one more turn. Finding... I want to say the UFO. Still haven't found a second Innocence. Doran still missing in action. So, yeah, our draws could be better. Seam rip the UFO. Can hope they animate Anchorage. Opponent did have the Get Lost. Not too surprising, they've seen a lot of cards. And they shock themselves to keep a bit more mana available, maybe a 3 steps counter draw. Yeah, I'll be patient. Don't need the expel. Tortoise I'll keep. Okay, so the UFO could maybe attack for 6 next turn. Opponent's milling half my deck with a technique. Alright, so that's their actual win condition. I was hoping they wouldn't have any mill effect given the River Regent. But yeah, the technique now means that we could just be dead if they have a monument to mill the remaining half. Another Seam Rip instead. Alright, so we're not dead yet. The clock is ticking, 13 cards remaining. Can have a look at my graveyard to see what's left. This is the last Doran. Do I have any tortoises? 1 tortoise left, unless it's exiled. It is. So, yeah, Doran's the only way I have of winning the game. And then I guess 1 Enduring Innocence might be remaining too, which can attack for 2 at a time. But yeah, they can just block with a fish. So if Doran doesn't stick the landing, we don't have a chance. So yeah, I think this game's pretty much lost. And the Librarian will draw a few cards. Can hex it, but I don't think that'll save me. Yeah, mill decks are pretty rough. Just need to have an explosive start. But having to play around board wipes means that usually doesn't work out. Yeah, I mean, we can just get the game over with and get this Doran countered. For now it resolves. And Get Lost can get a UFO back, but we don't have any towns, so it doesn't apply any pressure. Another Librarian, okay. Oh, can once again hex it. So it's a bit strange to me that they both have the mill win condition as well as a bunch of creatures to close out the game. Usually you want to pick a lane. But yeah, there's the Ultima I mentioned earlier, so that'll wipe the board and leave no witnesses behind. So yeah, at this point, the only realistic win condition would be a single Enduring Innocence. Just double checking here. But I believe that's correct. And yeah, that's not the most realistic win condition. So it's going to take 10 turns here to mill out, and then we'll lose the game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a decent hand. Do I keep up Requiting Hex? I don't think I necessarily have to. Can just play Zealot next turn, save myself the damage. Could regret it if they play Lenor Elves. But yeah, Freebooter they can keep. So turn 2 Zealot, turn 3 Tortoise. Hope for a turn 4 Vivian. Opponent maybe a Sacrifice deck. On blue-black. And they might have their own Hex. Yep. Alright, that's too bad. The UFO is not at its best here, but it does still block. And a Strategic Betrayal will get rid of it. Don't feel the need to hex, even though I could have blinded to gain 2. I want to avoid giving them a treasure. Alright, Bovine's not bad if it survives. So still not sure what our opponent's kind of building towards. As long as they keep 1-for-1ing me with removal, it's okay, assuming we can have Vivian stick the landing and eventually take over. Another removal spell. This one can also answer Planeswalkers. Alright, we'll try the Tortoise. This one's got hexproof during our turn, but we might see another Strategic Betrayal. Alright, opponent passes. So yeah, can potentially hex Freebooter to get in for 6. Does mean they get a treasure. I guess we'll try it. And then it's possible our opponent's sitting on a board wipe. And they'll get a 2-for-1. Otherwise, this gives us the mana for Vivian. The Realm can make some Spirit tokens. And a Bitter Triumph now answers the Tortoise, but yeah, that's another answer for Planeswalkers. That's no longer available. So hopefully Vivian resolves. And we can start plussing to find more creatures, since we cannot destroy the indestructible Terminus. And a Doran will do. Won't be able to block their Spirit token, so that can still pressure Vivian. but we can also hex it. Could have maybe hexed before they got to untap to maybe set up their terminus. Opponent goes to attackers. This is not a spirit, so they can attack past it. Yeah, may as well hex now. I believe this is only as a sorcery. No, never mind. Alright, probably should have read that more carefully then. So at the beginning of their upkeep, they get to reanimate their greedy freebooter. Not the end of the world. Alright, so can plus Vivian. And then we're not too far from an ultimate. Take the druid. And then I can go for Doran. Hit you for 4, play another druid. So the freebooter's not necessarily gonna save them here. Probably the first time I've seen the Terminus get something back, I'll be honest. And the Overlord Hardcast can destroy it with Vivian, since it is an enchantment. So then we can clear a path here, and yeah, opponent knows that they're dead. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Lots of high toughness creatures into a Doran, facing the Landfall deck. At least we have a Get Lost, can also be an answer to the Sapling Nursery. But we'll probably need our Expel the Interlopers to stabilize. At least our opponent wasn't off to the fastest start. And they are playing white as well for a Seam Rip. Alright, so Bovines next. Could still play Doran next turn, and then follow that up with 2 more 1-mana Zealots. And yeah, Fellow Retreat's a pretty nice payoff if you're in white for the Landfall deck. Could just cast a Get Lost to get rid of it, which is maybe not a bad idea. So just play Doran and blow up the retreat. Chocobo grows. And there's Ice Still. They might have wanted to mill a card since they don't have any lands in graveyard. And Badger Mole on top. So currently the Chocobo is the bigger problem between the two creatures. But yeah, I can pretty much empty out my hand here. Bedrock Tortoise would have been game over pretty much, since I could have cast it for 3 mana, doubling my damage output, and then still Get Lost the Explorer. Now I think I wait on Get Lost, because the Explorer's not doing anything, and I can maybe clear the Chocobo. Harmonizer, okay. Hardcasts instead of Warped. So we'll see how much damage they can present. Another Chocobo on top. And not good enough. They have the land. They're missing Trample. Explorer mills an enchantment. Don't even know if they can afford to attack. I'll block. But I assume I still want to... Actually, a double block would have been reasonable too, since then I could have just traded 1 Zealot for a Chocobo. But yeah, I'm assuming I still wanted to Get Lost here. And then we should have lethal on the way back. But yeah, I kind of like the double block there. And we actually found the Tortoise, so now we have more than enough. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand's definitely on the slow side without any 1 or 2 drops. But our late game could be powerful between Innocence and Vivian drawing cards. So if it's a slightly slower matchup, this hand could work out. If our opponent starts with turn 1 Llanowar Elves, turn 2 Banjo Mole Cub, we're probably going to get run over. So don't mind seeing the Undercity Sewers. Still hoping to avoid a graveyard deck, looks to be more controlling. So whatever 2-drop I play has a decent chance of getting hexed, but sure. Next turn we can play the Innocence and at least draw a few cards. And our opponent did indeed have the hex. Vivian should be powerful too if we can resolve it. The one issue with Innocence is if they have the cover-up with Collect Evidence enabled, they can exile all 4 copies from the deck. And it's also not going to be coming back out of the graveyard. So need to try and get some value while we can. And the Seats can now take Vivian, most likely. I'm sure they can handle the creatures more easily. Goes for the Tortoise. Alright, in that case we'll try the Bovine. Draw a card, and then maybe next turn we'll see the cover-up. In which case I could top deck an untapped land to still cast a Vivian afterwards, which would be nice. Okay, opponent actually had a Bitter Triumph. Also could have been an answer to Planeswalkers. So they might have more of those. So far, all the opponent's lands produce black mana, so it could also be a Doomsday Excruciator combo deck. And yeah, Kavera points in that direction as they get back the seats. Can also make me discard Vivian now. Still goes for the Innocence. And we draw another. Still kind of leaning Bedrock Tortoise here. Blocks pretty well. And then playing Innocence when we can follow up with a 2-drop right away is a bit more appealing. Yeah, and there's the Excruciator. So they already have Restless Reef in play to mill me for 4. So this is where I would love to draw a Requiting Hex. Otherwise we're probably going to get milled out, and yeah, it's looking that way. So is there anything I can come up with? Not really. Just gotta put stuff in play and then hope to overpower them. I could bluff having a Requiting Hex in hand, but I doubt our opponent's gonna respect it. So then double 2-drop versus playing the Bovine. I guess we'll double 2-drop. And then I can't really afford to trade the Tortoise for Excruciator. But yeah, if we had a Hex or a Get Lost in hand, we could have dealt with a Restless Reef. Avarice lets me draw 3. And they might have another one. Yep. Alright, that'll do it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. We have a hand that relies on the Druid surviving and maybe getting to 5 mana for Expel. Would certainly trade Expel for a 3rd land. But yeah, I think I give it a try. There's a lot of creature matchups where this can win the game. And if we take a virtual mulligan and remove an Expel, I think we keep. Facing turn 1 Mountain. A red-green. Ravenous Robots. Have not seen the robots in red-green before. But yeah, if they go wide, Expel can catch us back up, so do not have an issue with it. Making 1/1s is a good strategy against just chum blocking Doran and our high toughness creatures in general. So that's where the sweeper is pretty important, since we don't have a way to give our team trample, which would maybe be a different way to get around it. So we'll see what they have to offer. I see, Mona Lisa. So it's definitely more of a combo deck than pure artifacts, I think. Well, the good news is we can already expel, and then we'll still have a backup. Or I can play the bovine, keep up Get Lost. I think we just want to wipe the board already. And then hit for 5. Next turn we're attacking for 9 damage at least. Another robots. Alright, let me start by attacking. And then probably just play 2 more creatures out, as opposed to destroying the robots, but that's certainly an option. Alright, opponent with a guac to make an extra token, sure. So yeah, I think I've seen versions of this before where Mona Lisa can kind of go infinite with pizza and some other combo pieces. So they're just trying to buy a bit of time. At least the bovine flies, so that's not as easy to trump with the robot tokens. And then next turn we'll just clear the path with Expel once again. The only concern is Doran getting removed somehow. But nope, opponent scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a functional hand. Zealot into Tortoise. Bovine for more pressure. And then an Expel to wipe the board against other creature decks. Our opponent blue-green. And Courtyard naming Wolf. It's been a while since I've seen one of those. Could also just play the bovine, and then next turn we get to immediately attack for 8. In case they're holding on to a counterspell here. I see. It's actually a changeling deck. And the Unholy Annex. So they control a demon, so it'll drain for 2. Alright, so play Tortoise, attack for 4, and then I can still get lost the Annex. Can maybe wait to cast it, might affect their decisions. Possible they have the counter spell, where if they control a dragon, it's counter unless you pay 4. If they're kind of synergizing with all the changelings. Another Annex. So now we can just flip the script and get lost to Sneakling. And then our opponent will lose 4 life, and then next turn we just attack for lethal. Works for me. Alright, sweet. So yeah, we got to see this Abzan high toughness deck in action, and while we played it in the regular play queue, we still faced a good amount of meta decks, and the deck seems pretty well positioned against a lot of the green decks, various green landfall decks and the other green badger mold decks, since the combination of mana creatures with high toughness into a board wipe like Expel the Interlopers that only affects the opponent's creatures can be quite backbreaking. On the other hand, the deck is pretty weak in the face of combo and control, since our opponent can just have a few removal spells to deal with our payoffs like the Bedrock Tortoise and Doran, and then our high toughness creatures don't really do anything by themselves, and if we give our opponents enough time to draw their combo or draw their board wipes, then of course they can eventually take over the late game. So for those matchups, we would want some additional targeted discard effects like duress, or maybe some more diversified win conditions like more planeswalkers or other enchantments maybe that can help win the game, since creatures will often struggle against those board wipe heavy decks. So yeah, those matchups are definitely going to be an uphill battle with this best of one configuration. And don't get me started on graveyard strategies, since without any main deck graveyard hate, those matchups are also unwinnable. So I wouldn't recommend this for the current best of one ranked ladder, but if you just want to have some fun and deal a lot of damage with your high toughness creatures, it's a pretty fun time in the play queue. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.